idea was here they could build these facilities in a location where they might not even have to transport it. They just take the gas out of the ground, run it into magnetohydrodynamic generators, which was the original concept, which produce, in a compact area very efficiently huge amounts of energy. And that's sort of the original idea behind, sort of HAARP and why it was located where it was and so on.
But is that really what it's there for?
Oh, no.
What is its purpose?
Several applications. Over-the-horizon radar is one of them, being able to look over the horizon for incoming aircraft and so on. Being able to distinguish, what's coming in is one of the other attributes of the system. You can create an energy field around each of those objects, and each of them that carry a nuclear payload produce a different kind of signature that you can then, with gamma ray detectors on satellites, actually figure out which ones carry nuclear payloads, which is incredibly valuable, militarily valuable thing. And then thirdly, along that same line, you can create a EMP, an electromagnetic pulse or a surge of energy that knocks out the electronics of those incoming craft, causing them to malfunction and crash. So you can detect them. Also in that detection, you can get down to cruise missile heights. So you can get very, very low elevations or all the way up to intercontinental ballistic missile heights, which are, coming in literally from outer space. So, that versatility in just those applications was interesting to the military. But then they discovered they could also do Earth-penetrating tomography, which in simple language is like, by analogy again, would be like X-raying the Earth or looking into the Earth and imaging using radio frequency energy in this case, extremely low frequency energy that penetrates the Earth and sea with an ELF, an extremely low frequency wave, that then a certain amount of that energy is reflected and can be read for locating underground shelters, nuclear facilities. Can also be used for determining oil and gas structures and other metals and mineral structures based on how the reflected signal comes back to the surface. And this is because a certain portion of it does, and the rest just kind of passes through. And that was one of the big applications. And the same type of technology is used for communicating with submarines when they're down really deep. Shorter wavelengths don't penetrate the Earth and sea efficiently enough to reach those submarines. So they have to use an extremely low frequency signal that'll penetrate, which, the old days they used to, and they still do, create them with 13 to 26 mile long antennas in Wisconsin and other places around the world that allow them that ability to do it. In this case, they could alter the ionosphere, change it from DC to AC, like Tesla. Only in this case, the return signal is coherent. It's rhythmic. It's pulsed at a specific frequency for a specific effect. And so we take the ionosphere with a small instrument on the ground that concentrates radio frequency energy, and we alter the ionosphere in this instance to act as an antenna, a broadcast antenna in the sky, replacing those that previously and currently are in the ground. So that application came out of the original patents. That one presents some other issues dealing with human health because of the frequency ranges it operates in. But then moving on to the rest of the military applications, included weather modification. The early days, the model was different in terms of how Ben looked at it, Dr. Eason looked at it, but in his last sort of visualization how that would work, it would be through the manipulation of gravitational waves, which ultimately affect weather in his model of the world and sort of how it operates. And those are just some of the applications that immediately pop out of the literature as you relate to HAARP.
So, in a sense, this is very important to the military-industrial complex and to the paradigm on security and for what they translate as the real security.
Yeah, because in how they view it, absolutely. And the other issue is that there's some environmental possibilities that are kind of interesting, and then the energy, and there's also an energy transfer technology, the idea of beaming energy up into the ionosphere, reflecting it back to the Earth in such a way that it could be reconfigured into electric without transmission lines. And that goes back to some of Tesla's concepts. So I think his were a little different in form and content, because at the same time you beam energy around. If you get in between that beam and its energy source, you've got a real problem if you're in any kind of sophisticated aircraft or a satellite. And anti-satellite applications were part of this under a couple of different models. But those things, of course, are strategic. If you can knock a satellite out, you really can eliminate modern communications. At least a good chunk of it in one big sweep. And those kinds of uses, everyone can see. The environmental, being able to create chemical reactions in the upper atmosphere, things that would replenish, for instance, ozone or knock out specific pollutants. That's an application that's on a very slow and careful, open basis might be worth taking a look at some point. But, I think those are things that didn't really come out so much. They came out in the patents and his later work as well, but not so much in terms of military uses. When quizzed on this, and the military was, when they were a little more open, on CBC TV, they made some statements, and we found one of their technical reports that actually laid out the direction of the research in terms of weather modification.
How dangerous or violent is this technology when it's altering the ionosphere, impacts on flying, on radiation, on human health, on how much radiation then comes into the Earth? If it's altering or cooking the ionosphere and blowing holes in the ionosphere, what's the relevance of that?
Well, like for instance, in one application for anti-satellite, you create a heating situation where you push up like a column, so you're pushing through maybe several hundred miles of ionosphere, and what happens is atmosphere moves into that space, and as it does, when you hit a satellite trajectory, a low orbiting satellite as an example, and it runs into that layer of thin atmosphere that shouldn't be there, it creates friction, it burns up essentially, and you flip the device off and the satellite's no longer functional, and you got plausible deniability. But at the same time, you allow radiation to come into the Earth. The ionosphere is a shield that protects us from various particle streams coming off the sun and from outer space that would make life impossible here. That would literally alter the genetic footprint to the point of extinction. That's why the ionosphere is important, and why in these uses we're concerned, and the health implications that are obvious. The other is in the ELF range, where they're using it for earth penetrating tomography and some of these other applications. What needs to be recognized, there are window frequencies that affect human behavior and health, based upon how our bodies and minds and systems as living organisms react to energy, even weak, extremely weak energy fields, if they're coherent, rhythmic signals, not like what nature does. Nature creates signals that are kind of all over the map, and most of that is, not even, does not negatively affect health or our basic condition. But man-made rhythmic signals, well, they may, carry a tune via the radio. Certain signals have a profound effect on human health and even our psyches, and that's really the direction that our work took. And I can say this about the HAARP relationship to that is in the ELF range, the brain actually entrains to certain ELF signals and begins to follow them, mirror them, or what's called a frequency following response in the literature. And what happens is in these ranges, you can literally change the emotional state of huge segments of the population. And we documented very carefully and thoroughly, sort of the sources for that and the basic research for that. And in fact, between the two books, I think there's probably 700-800 sources cited that really lay the foundation for where the technology has gone and why we need to be concerned. And this particular area really concerns me greatly. In fact, after the HAARP story, we continue to research that issue of just what is possible. And this area of manipulation has grown in complexity, and the RFPs and the requests for proposals by government in this area continue. And so we document quite a bit of that in our latest book, Controlling the Human Mind. And then we have a lot of backup additional documentation located at the Earthpulse website. At
earthpulse.com?
Yeah, that's it. And and we have a whole section on mind effects there.